All right, here we go. All right, printer types. Here we go.
In this lesson, we're going to talk about the various types of printers that you can use with your PC system. As you probably know, the role of a printer is to accept text and graphic output from a PC system and transfer that onto a piece of paper. The printers vary greatly in size, speed, sophistication, and cost. Let's talk about the various different types of printers you can choose from. The first and oldest type is called an impact or dot matrix printer. There are 4 critical components in a dot matrix printer. The first is the print head. The print head is relatively small in a dot matrix printer. If we were to look at it up close, it would look something like this, a kind of square block with a series of pins. In addition to the print head, we also have a component called the platen. It's a circular component, like a big cylinder, and it's black in color. Its job is to hold the paper in place and serve as a back for the print head as it hits the paper. An impact printer also has a ribbon and a component called the tractor feed. The ribbon contains the ink that is transferred onto the paper, and the tractor feed is used to draw continuous feed paper up to the printer. So how does this all work? The tractor feed pulls a piece of paper and rolls it around the platen. If you were to look at it end on, the platen would be here, the print head would be here, and the piece of paper would be rolled up around it like that. The print head has a series of pins. The number of pins can vary. A very expensive dot matrix printer will have only 9 pins, as you see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A more expensive, higher quality dot matrix printer might have upwards of 24 different pins. Each of these pins is actually retracted inside the print head. Let's look at a close-up view here of the print head turned 90 degrees from where we're looking at it now. So we've got our piece of paper here. We've got our platen right here. Inside this print head, each of these pins look like this. And they've got a spring right here that keeps them pulled inside of the print head. Back here, they have an electrical solenoid. To print, the printer sends electrical current through the pattern of these pins. When the
Okay, what's going on? Stand by. We're at 211.
In this lesson, we're going to talk about the various types of printers that you can use with your piece. To look at it up close, it would look something like this, a kind of square block with a series of pins. In addition to the print head, we also have it fires the pin out like this. They hit the ribbon up against the paper and leave an imprint on the paper. By using a variety of patterns, we can create different letters. For instance, with this 9-head pin, if we wanted to make the letter A, we would fire these pins, and there's our letter A. Using only 9 pins means that the letters don't have great quality. The more pins you have in the print head, the better the print quality. Many 9-pin dot matrix printers compensate by making 2 passes for each line of text. By doing that, it can create better, more regular looking letters. By going through and creating each letter in the line twice, you can actually use 2 different patterns in the pins. The printer overlays one line over the other, creating relatively good looking characters. Obviously, though, if you're having to print each line twice, it takes twice as long to print. Dot matrix printers have been with us for quite some time, and they continue to remain. One of the key reasons is the fact that dot matrix printers can do one thing that most printers just can't do. That is, they can print duplicate or triplicate forms. With the dot matrix printer, we actually have a physical impact. That means you can put carbon copies through the dot matrix printer and have them print out. For that reason, you still see them used for a variety of different purposes, like rental contracts, receipts, or other forms where we need to print copies in duplicate or triplicate. Most other printer types don't use impact. The next type of printer we want to talk about is called an inkjet printer. Inkjet printers create high-quality output and they are fairly inexpensive. Let's take a look at how an inkjet printer works. Just like with the dot matrix printer, we have our platen and we use a feeder to pull a piece of paper through, wrap it around the platen, and insert it between the platen and the print head. If you have a duplexing assembly, the printer will feed the paper through the printer twice, printing on both sides of the paper. The ink cartridges sit inside a carriage and a belt is used to move the carriage across the paper. When you install a new cartridge, use the printer calibration utility to calibrate the inkjet so that all the ink cartridges are aligned. This ensures that the final output is properly represented on the paper. While a dot matrix printer uses continuous feed paper, an inkjet printer uses cut sheets of paper, just like you would use for a copy machine. The print head in an inkjet printer is similar to a dot matrix printer. If we were to rotate this print head and look at it the way it would look to the piece of paper, we'd see it's composed of a series of dots, just like a dot matrix printer. However, instead of having pins inside that come out and strike a ribbon, we have a whole bunch of ink here inside of our ink reservoir. This is where inkjet printers diverge from a dot matrix printer. It's actually kind of cool. What happens is that current is applied to a specific pattern of nozzles. Let's say we want to fire these nozzles. To do that, an electrical current is applied to each of these nozzles. When that happens, the ink that's inside of this nozzle actually boils. It creates an air bubble. When that happens, it actually shoots a jet of ink and makes a dot on the piece of paper. By varying the current and applying it to different nozzles in the print head, we're able to create different patterns on the paper. Inkjet printers have one weakness, however, and that is that most of the electronic circuitry that makes up the printer is not actually in the printer itself. When you use up the ink in the ink reservoir, you have to get a new ink cartridge. And how much does it cost? Probably as much, if not more, than the printer itself. That's because most of the electronic circuitry that makes up the inkjet printer is actually in the print head. So when you have to change the ink reservoir, you are buying a new component that makes up the inkjet printer. And that's why the cartridges are expensive. Let's talk about the next type of printer called a solid ink printer. A solid ink printer creates smaller, more uniform dots than a dot matrix or inkjet printer. And instead of using a ribbon or liquid ink, a solid ink printer uses solid sticks of ink that are inserted inside the printer. Let's take a look at how the process works because it's a little different from the dot matrix or the inkjet printers. In fact, it's kind of a hybrid between an inkjet printer and a laser printer. In a solid ink printer, multiple solid ink sticks are melted within the print head and are jetted onto a drum. As the ink is jetted onto the drum, it actually rotates. It can contain one full page of content, so if you were to look at the drum after the ink was melted, the top of the page might start here and go around, and the bottom of the page would be right here. After the ink is melted onto the drum, a piece of paper is then drawn from a paper tray and is rotated around the drum or drawn across the drum. And as it does so, the melted ink from the drum is transferred onto the piece of paper. The ink then cools and adheres itself to the paper. Solid ink printers work really well. In fact, they create some of the highest quality output you can get outside of a regular printing process. The next type of printer we want to talk about is a thermal printer. Thermal printers have been with us for quite some time, so it's older technology. In fact, many of the older fax machines and many of the lower-end fax machines that you buy today still use thermal technology. Instead of using ribbon or ink or melted ink sticks, they use special paper that reacts to heat. It uses heat to transfer an image from the printer onto this special paper. Then the feed assembly takes the thermal paper off the roll and sends it through the printer and then outside the printer. Since thermal printers use special paper, we don't use these printers very often because the paper is expensive. The next type of printer we want to talk about is a dye sublimation printer. Just like a solid ink printer, dye sublimation printers have actually been around for a while. A dye sublimation printer allows you to print photolab quality pictures. The key benefit is that they provide a smooth blending of colors. That's something that's hard to achieve with other types of printers. The dye sublimation printer does this really well, and that's why we can get such high quality photographs using this type of technology. In addition, it's also less vulnerable to fading and distortion over time. If you've ever printed anything off of a color inkjet printer and put it in a file, then when you come back to it a year later, you know that the inks fade. They also tend to bleed just a little bit. In dye sublimation printing, the colors are not laid down as individual dots. Inside of a dye sublimation printer is a long roll of semi-transparent film, and that film is made up of individual sheets stuck end to end of red, blue, yellow, and gray film. Embedded in this film are solid dyes corresponding to the 4 basic colors used in high-end printing, meaning cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. If you've ever taken something to a professional printer to be printed, and you printed it using standard LaserJet or inkjet technology, or even created the file using red, green, and blue technology, you know they'll say, oh, we can't do this. We need the electronic file formatted using these 4 colors instead of red, green, and blue. So how does a dye sublimation printer work then? And the way it works is that we have a print head like we do with other types of printers. Then we have our transparent film. We're looking at this end on now, and then we have our piece of paper. What happens is that the print head heats up and it passes over the transparent film. As this happens, the dyes that are in this film vaporize and are transferred to the paper. They actually permeate the glossy surface of the paper, and as they cool, they return back to their solid form. In this way, we can transfer a very high-quality image to a piece of paper. The nice thing about dye sublimation printers is that they create a gentle gradation. Instead of having distinct dots of particular colors, it creates a gentle gradation between colors. And this makes it so that the photograph looks like a regular photograph. It looks like a real picture. There's one other type of printing technology that you need to be familiar with, and that's the laser printer. The technology used within a laser printer is a little bit more complex than what we've talked about here, so we'll cover that separately. In this lesson, we talked about 5 different printing technologies. We talked about impact or dot matrix, inkjet, thermal, solid ink, and dye sublimation.
All right. Yeah, that was some amazing information about printing. All right. All right, let's see. I think what I'd like to do, if I can find my test out for you. I want to go ahead and watch the next video on laser printing, because it is useful to watch both of these together so you get all the printing types. So yes, I'm going to inundate you with videos right away because we're going to do quite a bit of work afterwards. So don't worry. All right.
In this lesson, we're going to talk about the laser printing process. As a PC technician, you will support laser printers because they're very widely implemented. They create very high quality output, they're very fast, and they're reasonably economical to use. With that in mind, let's talk about how laser printers work. Laser printers are fairly complex. They use lasers in a process of melting and cooling plastic in order to produce a high quality image. Let's take a look at the different components that make up a laser printer. First, we have an imaging drum, the primary charge roller, and the laser. We also have the developer roller, a transfer roller, and a unit called the fuser. And of course, we have toner. The toner is the black dust that's used to print in a laser printer. As you can see, we have a lot more components inside of a laser printer than other printers. A duplexing assembly is required to print 2-sided output on a laser printer. Many inkjet printers also use duplexing assemblies to print 2-sided paper. Duplexing assemblies are typically mounted on the back of a laser or inkjet printer. After one side is printed, the paper is routed to the duplexing assembly, which turns the paper over and reroutes it through the printer a second time. Without a duplexing assembly, dual-sided printing is done manually. A transfer belt is used on some high-end color laser printers. Colors are applied to the transfer belt and then to the paper. This step is repeated for different colors. Let's take a look at how these different components work together to take data from the PC system and transfer it onto a piece of paper. The laser printing process begins with the cleaning phase. The cleaning phase prepares the drum by removing the previous image printed. It uses a rubber cleaning blade to remove any excess toner on the drum, and then it scrapes off the debris into a debris cavity. Next, a heat roller is lubricated to ensure that enough heat will be evenly applied to transfer the next image printed. Then, an electrostatic erase lamp neutralizes the electrical charges that remain on the drum from the previous printed image. In the laser printing process, the print job comes in from our PC over here, and is stored in RAM on the printer itself. The print job is taken one page at a time out of the RAM and processed. At that point, the print job from printer RAM is rasterized. This is an important concept to remember when we're dealing with laser printers. What do we mean when we say rasterized? The best way to think of rasterization is to imagine the document that you're printing from your PC system. Then imagine that you take that document and tear it into little strips like this. We aren't concerned about the line breaks or margins. We aren't talking about lines of text. We're talking about strips of this document. Electronically, that is what we are doing when we rasterize it. We are breaking down the document into strips or lines. Then the document is fed one line or one strip at a time to the laser up here. The heart of the laser printer is not really so much the laser, although the name would lead you to believe so. It's actually a component called the imaging drum. So to process the print job, the first thing that happens is that a uniform negative charge is applied to this drum. That's done by the primary charge roller. It emits light that hits the surface of the drum and the drum rotates. And as it does, a negative electrical charge is applied uniformly all the way around the drum. The laser then sends a pattern of pulses to the oscillating mirror. This oscillating mirror rotates side to side like this, and by doing that, it reflects those pulses from the laser across the drum. If we were to look at it from a different perspective, if we were to rotate this and look at the drum from this perspective, the laser would hit the drum starting up here and go across like this as the drum rotates. The important thing to remember is that wherever this laser hits the drum, it discharges the negative charge. So wherever the laser did not hit, we still have a uniform negative charge. Wherever the laser did hit, the drum loses its negative charge and becomes neutral. For example, if the laser made a dot here, that dot becomes a neutral charge. By doing this, we create a negative image of this document on the drum. So we make our letters. We have an A and a B and a C or whatever it is we're creating, or it could be an image or a picture of something. At this point, as it rotates through, we have a part down here called the developer roller, which applies toner to the drum. The toner, that little black dust that you always see when you open up a laser printer, is basically just chopped up tiny little pieces of plastic and has a negative charge. It has the same charge as the areas where the laser did not hit on the drum. Because of that, they repel. Therefore, the toner will not stick to any areas of the drum that have a negative charge. The only places that the toner will stick are the spots in the drum where the laser blinked its dots and discharged the drum. Therefore, we create a negative image of the document on the drum using that plastic toner. At this point, our piece of paper actually comes into the picture. Up to this point, we've been dealing with the document electronically. Now we run a piece of paper through here. The pickup rollers pick up the top of the paper from the paper tray and feed it through the printer. At the same time, separator pads spin in the opposite direction from under the paper and push back any extra paper. This prevents more than one piece of paper from being sent through the printer at a time. As the paper enters the printer, there's a part right here called a transfer roller, and it has a very important job. Remember, this toner is negatively charged and it's stuck to the neutral areas of the drum. And because the areas on the drum where the laser hit are neutral, the toner isn't stuck very well. It's just kind of sticking there. It's not stuck at all to the negative areas. To transfer that toner from the drum to the paper, we need to make the paper much more attractive to that negatively charged toner. To do that, we use the transfer roller right here. As the paper passes underneath the transfer roller, it applies a positive charge to the paper. As the paper moves through and the drum rotates, those toner particles in the neutral areas of the drum move to the positively charged paper. So the toner is essentially stripped off of the drum and laid down on the paper as the paper moves through the printer and underneath the drum. The drum rotates and transfers the toner down here onto the positively charged paper. So on the other end, we have our piece of paper coming out of the printer, and it's got all that toner stuck to it. That toner will brush off easily if it isn't fused to the paper. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort, and if you've ever had a malfunctioning laser printer, you know that if something goes wrong with the fuser over here, that toner will just flake off. Even though it is stuck on there with a positive to negative charge, it's not that strong. So what we need to do is fix it to that piece of paper, and that's done with the fuser assembly. The fuser assembly is composed of two different rollers. We have the hot roller and the pressure roller. Basically what happens is we heat up this hot roller and the toner, because it's just made up of plastic. It actually melts and is pressed onto the paper by the pressure roller. You know that when you get a piece of paper out of a laser printer, it's hot. As that cools, the plastic that makes up the toner adheres to the piece of paper. So let's review what we've talked about in this lesson. We talked about how a laser printer works. We identified its different components like the drum, the laser, the fuser, and the developer and transfer rollers. Then we talked about how all those parts work together to transfer an image using a laser onto a photosensitive drum, coating it with toner, and then transferring that toner to paper and melting the toner right onto the paper itself. And lastly, we talked about how the printer cleans the drum in preparation for the next print image.
All right. I know that that's a lot of engineering and high technology, optical related information. You don't really need to memorize or remember any of that. Laser printers, they're even more complex than all of that. But just remember, essentially it is laser, positive and negative charges, and rollers and drums that make up the methods that's used to create a laser image. All right, phew. Okay, you got through that. So let's go ahead and do some labs to give your brain some break from the information. All right. So our first lab is going to be 8.1.7, and we're basically selecting a printer, but let's go through that. All right. So 8.1.7, choose a printer. So you are the IT administrator for Small Corp. You're choosing a printer for the workstation in Office 2. You want to print highly detailed color images from a digital camera. And from the video, you probably would want one of those dye or solid ink printers. So your first choice is a printer that can achieve the highest level of detail. Your second choice is a printer that will print color photographs quickly. Okay, those two things are kind of your parameters or specs for your printer. So in this lab, your task is to complete the following. Choose the most appropriate printer, connect the printer to the computer, plug the printer into the surge protector. Woohoo. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So obviously we're going to get a selection of printers to choose from. So if we take a look, we have an Okadata ML329 pin. Boy, those things were so much of a headache. So glad I don't have to deal with them anymore. But anyway, it's a dot matrix printer. And believe me, you will not see many of these around, but they're very reliable, but it's, yeah, they're not fun to maintain. And then we have a Brother Laser USB 2.0 up to 23 ppms pages per minute, black and white, 2400 to 600 DPI, and that's just the kind of the depth, the detail of the image and text on the page. And these also have details. You can take a look at the front and back, etc. But our excuse me, our parameters around this assignment or this lab or this project is to select a printer that will print color photographs. So neither one of those will work. Dot matrix does not do high quality in color. And this laser would be nice, but it's only a black and white. So obviously our choices is HP PhotoSmart, and that will give you a clue right there. The PhotoSmart Plus, these are actually really good printers. Even though they're inkjet, they actually produce as good a quality as a laser in some instances. So let's go ahead and pull that into our workspace. All right. So we need to connect the printer to the computer, open up our cables, turn our computer around so we can see the back of it, turn our printer around. And we notice that we have the USB connectors, 3020. So we are AB cables, so and it's very, very standard with printers. So let's go ahead and select that cable, select the B side to our printer, the printer port, and in the A side, the USB A to our regular USB port on our computer. All right. And that's, yeah, you see that if you have those type of cables, you'll see those in many instances on these printers, especially the inkjet. All right. So we have our computer connected, but we need our power. So we have a power adapter here for an HP AC to DC. Go ahead and select that, and then it's even color coded. Purple connector goes into your printer. The plug-in obviously goes into the surge protector. All right, so now we're ready to print. So that was all our processes for this lab. Just connect the printer and plug it in so you have power. Any questions about this lab? Score it, we're all good. All right, no questions.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy, there you go.
Yeah.
So
Actually did that one.
You did that, great.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and go on to the next lab. Another printer lab, 825. And that one is even easier, I think. Or maybe it isn't. So you, the IT admin, you have been asked to install and configure a printer for the CEO. Oh boy. Yeah, now you're working in the CEO's office, usually a big office. Usually has more to deal with. So the printer should use a USB connection and allow the CEO to print color reports. Not necessarily photographs, but he wants color reports. So we want to select the appropriate printer, choose a printer with the best quality and the fastest print capabilities, connect the printer to the computer using the appropriate cable or local printer, plug the printer into the surge protector, switch to the OS and verify the printer's installation, and then set the new printer as the default printer. All right, so you probably have the same printers. Oh, we have a few more. All right, let's see what we have here. We have a Canon BubbleJet. I think I had this very printer, BJC 4300. It's pretty good. It's color, inkjet, USB 2.0, 22 pages per minute. That's kind of slow, but it's high quality. These numbers will tell you the quality, and you can review these in the study guides. The 4800, 1200 is pretty good as far as DPI. We have a laser printer. It's a PCL5 HP LaserJet 1300. It's a black and white, so we probably don't want to choose that one. We have a PhotoSmart printer. This one's 30 pages per minute. That's a little bit faster than that inkjet. It's a little bit faster than the BubbleJet, the Canon, and it does print color. This is the one we used before. Those are really nice printers. We have another laser. We have a Brother HL2140 black and white laser. The CEO is going to say, nah, I really want to print color. And then we have our good buddy, the Okadata dot matrix, which you probably won't see that on any of these jobs. So for me, I'm going to stick with our HP PhotoSmart. It's a really good all-around printer anyway, and probably the CEO would be happy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. Again, we added it to Office 2, so we're going to give the CEO the same printer. He'll probably frown a little bit because these are pretty inexpensive. That's kind of a joke. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get this all set up with our correct cabling. Once again, our USB 2.0 A and B, the printers, the B side into the printer, the A side into the PC, open USB port. All right, grab our power adapter, AC/DC, 12 volt, plug the DC in into your printer, and don't mess with his phone. And then plug your power AC part into the surge protector. All right, so we've satisfied connecting the printer and plugging it in. So we want to actually go into the desktop or into the OS and verify that it's added. So just click on your desktop. And the easiest way, just go to your search and type in device or DEV. You don't have to go to device manager. There's the devices and printers, which is in control panel, but this is kind of a shortcut. So just go to that devices and printers, and you see that we have the HP PhotoSmart Plus as one of our printers. It's added. If it was not connected, it would not show up here. You can do things like take a look at the printer properties and, you know, ports and device settings and all that fun stuff in there. So we know that it's running. And actually in here, you can print a test page. If you go into printer properties, and it's probably disabled here, but I would say go into there and print a test page, because it will show you that that printer will be printing successfully. And then the last thing I want to do is set it as the default printer, which means that all of the applications that have print capabilities will go to that printer. And it's really easy in Windows and in Mac as well. You can right click on it, and one of the first selection, see what's printing, which is actually good. And it's not going to show us here, but the second selection is set as default printer. And the little green check will move from the Microsoft XPS document writer, which is added to all of Windows OSs. And it's not a printer, it just gives you the opportunity to save it as a PDF or whatever. So when the green check shows under your currently added printer, now it is the default. So if you go to Word and print something or in the website, it's all good to go. Any questions? Good with that? No problems?
We're good.
All right. All right, so just to let you know, I didn't state this at the very beginning. My plan is to go through our test out, take a break, and then spend a good amount of time in Packet Tracer. Still, we're kind of still in networking. I want to review a little more networking, even though on our lesson plan, it does not show Packet Tracer exercises for today, but I do want to finish a few things on Packet Tracer with you all. Because I don't really, well, I know he did some things, but I'd like to redo them. Is everyone okay with that? Or what's your?
Yeah, I'd like to redo them.
Yep.
Sounds good.
No? Who said no?
Who said no? So what's the vote? Is it unanimous or?
Yes, I want to see it.
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
I did hear someone say no. Was that's reluctant to participate.
I said sounds good. Maybe that was confusing.
Oh, okay, Carol. Don't confuse us. All right. So let's move on to our next video. 821. And let's see. Yep, everyone's saying yes. Okay, got it. All right. All right, so our next video, we'll take a look at printing configurations. And it's so easy now, it's not a big deal. And I should take you all back 25, 30 years. See how fun you have with some of those dot matrix and some of those old laser printers that never work right. So, but yeah, you have drivers that are easier to deal with, etc. So, okay, sorry. Sometimes I digress. Here we go, printer or printing configuration.
In this lesson, we're going to cover basic printing concepts in Windows. In Windows, a printer is not actually a physical printer device. Instead, a printer, from the Windows operating system's perspective, is a logical software entity. This logical software entity that it calls a printer can control one or more actual physical printers. Let's take a look at how this works. A typical Windows printing setup is shown here. We have our host system where the printing is going to take place. We have our printed driver, the actual physical printer, and the spooler. Now, the physical printer itself, this entity right here, is called the print device. Now, we can still call this a printer, but from the perspective of the operating system, this is a print device. and the print device works hand in hand with the print driver and with the print spooler. All of these components work together to form a logical printer. So if you see an exam question asking you about what a logical printer is in Windows, remember that it's composed of 4 different components: the physical printer, the print device, the print driver, and the spooler.
Yeah, I do want to pause it briefly here because this is always one of the most missed questions on the PC Pro exam. There is within the OS is, remember, he's defining a logical printer, and it is composed of these 3 components, and I've seen so many students forget that. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
So with this in mind, let's talk about what happens when an application running on this workstation sends a print job to this logical printer. When you send a print job to the logical printer, the application that you're running here on the workstation, such as Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, sends the print job down here to the print spooler. The print spooler then works with the driver to reformat the data that's coming from the application into a language that the print device up here can understand. It might be PostScript, it might be PCL, or it might be some other proprietary print language. Whatever it is, the printer driver and the print spooler work together to reformat that data into a language that the physical printer or print device can understand. Now, after that's done, it stores the print job in a file on the hard drive inside the spooler. At that point, the job is said to have been spooled. Now it waits for the print device to be available. If this print device is turned off, or if it already has several print jobs queued, then the job will stay here in the spooler until the print device becomes available. When the print device is available, the print job will move from the spool and be sent to the print device, which then processes the print job and creates the printout. One of the neat features of this setup is that you can configure your logical printer. Remember, when I say logical printer, I'm talking about these components all functioning together as a logical entity. You can configure your logical printer to start sending the print job from the spooler to the print device before the job is actually done being spooled. By doing this, it prints faster. For example, as soon as one page is done being processed and converted, it can be sent from the spooler to the print device. And while that page is printing, your print driver over here and your spooler start working on sending page 2 to the print device. And same with pages 3 and 4 and so on. That way, at about the same time that the print spooler and the print driver are done processing the job, the last couple of pages are coming out of the print device itself. Now, if this is a small print job, this feature really doesn't help that much. It saves a little bit of time, but not a lot. But where this comes in really handy is when you're printing huge documents that might be 100 pages long. If you had to wait for the entire document to be spooled before you started printing, it could add several minutes onto the printing process. Again, depending on the size of the document. Now, when you're talking with your coworkers and you say, I'm going to send a print job to the printer, you know and they know that we're talking about sending a print job to the physical device. But Windows sees it as a logical entity consisting of 4 components: the printer device, the printer driver, the spooler, and the actual physical printer. Now let's talk about connecting print devices to our local workstation. Printers are connected to a local PC using a USB, a wireless, or an Ethernet connection. If you're using a USB connection with Windows 7 and 8, install the printer drivers for the printer before you connect the printer to the computer for the first time. That way, your system has all the drivers that it needs when the printer is plugged in and the operating system detects it. Your printer should come with a CD full of applications and drivers that need to be installed before you install the printer. Follow the instructions in the printer's documentation to install the necessary software. After you've installed all the drivers and management applications for the printer, you can plug in your USB printer. The Windows operating system will detect it and load the necessary drivers. In Windows 10, if your printer connects to your PC using a USB cable, all you have to do is plug the printer in. Your printer will connect automatically and your PC will download the right drivers so you can begin printing. After you've set up your system, the first thing that you should do is to send a test page to the printer to verify that the printer is working properly. And it doesn't matter whether you're dealing with a locally attached printer or a network printer. You should always run a test page before you just assume that everything's okay. This is really important because if you have the wrong printer driver and you send a large print job to the printer, more than likely the printer's going to say, oh, I'm not sure exactly what I'm supposed to print here, so I'll just print the raw data as I'm receiving it. And a 5-page document ends up being about 50 pages of gibberish. So always print a test page first before you start sending documents to make sure that everything printed correctly. If this test page doesn't come out, then you know you've got a problem somewhere with the connection or with the driver. And you'll need to identify the problem and figure out what caused it. If the test page prints properly, then the next step is to calibrate your printer. If you have a color printer, especially a very high-end color printer, then you should run some calibration tasks. There are 2 different types of calibrations that need to be done. The first one is to compare the colors that are being printed against a test image. If you go on the internet, you search terms like test images or calibrate test images or printer calibrate test image to find different images that you can download for calibration purposes. Then, download the image and display it on your monitor. Of course, we're assuming that your monitor colors are being displayed correctly. If not, take care of that first. Then, print your test image out on your printer and compare it with the image that's displayed on the screen. Depending on the printer driver and the type of printer, there'll be some type of interface provided in the driver or the management software that'll allow you to customize the colors until you get the best match between the printout and the image that's displayed on the screen. In addition to calibrating the colors against a test image, you also may need to align the colors. Depending on which type of printer you're dealing with, you may need to perform special alignment tasks each time you install a new ink cartridge or a new toner cartridge. The key is that color printers usually have 3 to 4 different color chambers. Many printers will use the colors shown here: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And it will create the colors on the color printout by mixing these colors in various proportions. And I'll point out too that many lower end color printers will not actually provide a black cartridge. They'll just mix all these colors together in huge quantities to create black. I don't like those kinds of printers because they just drain your ink really fast. If you're looking for a printer and you're concerned about the cost of maintaining it, get a printer that has a dedicated black cartridge in addition to the color cartridge that has these 3 colors in it. That's because most of the printing you're going to be doing will probably be black ink. Now, the ink coming out for these 4 colors needs to be placed on the paper in the right place so that they mix correctly. If they don't mix properly, you'll see one of 2 things happen. You'll see odd-looking colors because the colors aren't mixing correctly, and you may see ghosting. The ghosting occurs because the colors are not printing on top of each other. They're offset slightly, and hence they're not mixing, and you see ghost images in 1 or more colors. The process for aligning the printer depends upon the type of printer and the printer manufacturer. You'll need to check your documentation. Usually the process consists of using a special utility that comes with the printer to print out an alignment test page, and you'll be asked to identify which image on the page lines up the best. This tells your printer driver how to align the ink or toner from the 4 color chambers so it prints out properly. Let's review how to configure printers. The first thing we talked about was how a printer is composed of the physical print device, the printer, the print driver, and the spooler. We then talked about the ways you connect a printer to your PC system. And then we ended with calibrating and aligning the colors in the printer so that the colors come out properly on the page.
All right. Okay, so let's move on to our next lab. In our next lab, we are going to do some printer configuration. So in this lab, we are going to, let's see, we are on 835. And we're going to configure network printing. So now we're combining the 2 topics a little bit. So in this lab, you're an IT admin, small corp, printer is connected directly to the workstation in the support office, and you would like to share the printer with some of the computers in the network. So in this lab, you're tasked to complete the following. We are going to share the HP's PhotoSmart Plus printer, our favorite printer, using the share name HP PhotoSmart, no spaces in the name. Allow clients to render print jobs on their computer. On Office 2, add the shared HP printer to the list of available printers, and also in Office 2, accept the default name for the printer. So whenever you're wanting to configure or work with printers, just go to the devices and printers. The easiest way, you can go to control panel, but by clicking on the window. But I would just begin to type in DEV in your search, and it'll take you to your devices and printers. And you see that we have a HP PhotoSmart Plus printer. So right click and go into printing preferences. This is one, actually this can be done many ways. I'm going to start for me. Or printer, excuse me. Let me redo that, rewind. Don't go into printer preferences, it won't work in our simulation. Go into printer properties, excuse me. And it will bring up the printer properties pop up. And we have several tabs in here: security, device settings, about, and we'll get to some of those. But you notice we have a sharing tab in those selections of tabs in there. And then your selection of tabs, we do have a share this printer checkbox. So make sure you check that. It does default to the name of the printer. We want to change it, change the share name. So we're just going to augment it a little bit, take out the spaces and remove the word plus. So that matches our requirements. HP, whoops, PhotoSmart with no spaces. We do want to render print jobs on client's computer. And all that means is that the job will be rendered on their computer, but printed to the network printer. So basically the print job is saved as opposed to sending it to a server, et cetera. So we want to keep that checked. We're not changing the listen directory. And then we want to apply. And okay, so now that printer is available to anyone that's on the network. They should be able to search for that printer and find it. So we satisfied the first 2 bullet points. So let's go back into the office, back to the floor view. So I went through that pretty fast. So we were in the support office here. This is where we left, right? So if you look at the top tabs, we're going to go back into our nice little company, and we're going to go to the floor view. So now we need to go to Office 2, and we're going to go right to the Office 2 desktop. And by clicking on the Office 2, not the hardware will just take you to the workbench, and then you can click into the desktop, but we're going to go right to the desktop. So we want to add that network printer now. So go back into our printers, devices and printers. And you see here that we only have the default Microsoft XPS document writer. And you look on the top here, you have add device or add a printer. So we want to add a printer. And the first thing that will happen, it will list any printers that are available in the network. And we see here that we have, and it shows you the address, and it's in the support office, and it's that particular computer. And just keep that in mind. This is a way to find printers in case you're having issues finding them. And you just highlight it, the printer, click next. We're not going to change the share name. The share name is HP PhotoSmart Plus on support. So it's telling us not to go ahead and accept the default name for the printer. And next, it goes, and what it's doing now, it's actually searching for drivers, making sure you have the correct drivers, adding them to your local system to print with that network printer. And generally here, I would print a test page. And obviously we're not going to do it, but once you print the test page, it'll go to that printer and you're good. And then you just click finish. So it doesn't ask us to set it as a default printer because you may want to add several other printers, but once again, you know how to do that, set it as a default printer. And so let's score. Any questions about that lab?
No, sir.
No, sir. Pretty straightforward. And that's a very useful thing, useful process to go through. And because most printers now are networked anyway, so just if you remember that process, you won't have issues adding a network printer. All right. Let's see, where are we now? Oh, back to another video. What did we just watch? All right, 831. Okay. Is everyone doing okay? Hanging in there?
Yes.
Okay, now, well, we should have watched this video before the lab, but this lesson plan is usually a little backwards anyway. So this next video, we'll talk about network printing. All right.
In this lesson, we're going to discuss network printing. As a PC technician, you will need to know about both traditional printing and network printing. How much you have to know about each depends on the type of job you end up getting. If you end up working for a computer store where you're responsible for repairing customer computers, you will primarily focus on traditional printing methods. However, you will most likely get a job with the corporation or some other organization supporting the printing of the users in that organization. In this case, you'll need to know a lot more about network printing. Network printing allows us to use our printing resources more efficiently, as opposed to traditional printing. With network printing, we first connect all of our workstations to a network through a connecting medium of some type, and then we implement a network printer. There are different ways that we can do this. The first and least expensive way to connect workstations to the network for printing is to use a USB cable. This is also a less efficient option. Usually in a home or small office situation, you would take a printer and plug it into the back of one of the PCs using a USB cable, and then share it with other workstations. This is a shared printer. In this configuration, other hosts on the network can send the print job through the network to this workstation, which then sends it on through the USB cable through the shared printer. Also, some USB routers have a USB port that can be used to network the printer. You just plug the USB cable into the router to create a network printer. If you have an older printer that uses a serial connection, you can connect it to the network using the utilities available in Windows. However, the computer that you are connecting the printer to must have a serial port. Then you insert one end of the serial cable into the serial port of the computer and the other end into the printer. The main problem with this implementation is that it's totally dependent on this person's workstation being on. If this person doesn't come to work one day and their office is locked and shut up and the PC is off, then nobody else can print. That's why this type of implementation isn't used all that often. You can also implement a printer that has its own network interface already installed. This allows jobs to be sent from these workstations directly to that network printer. It doesn't have to go through the workstation. If you're in a big organization where productivity is really important, then we usually end up using a networked printer that's left on all the time, and then everybody can print to it, even if Mary or Fred didn't show up that day. The easiest way to share a printer is to use a printer with either an Ethernet or a Wi-Fi connection. Wi-Fi printers are convenient because you don't have to place your printer near your router. Using the Wi-Fi connection isn't the only way to print wirelessly. If your printer has an Ethernet jack and is located near your router, you can plug the printer into your router and install the printer drivers on each of your computers. Setting up an Ethernet connection on a printer is generally easier than Wi-Fi, and you're likely to get a stronger connection than you would if you were to rely on the printer's Wi-Fi antenna. For Ethernet-capable printers, connect the printer to a network router using an Ethernet cable. For Wi-Fi-capable printers, associate the printer with a wireless router or another wireless access point. The Bonjour Networking Technology Service also allows you to share a printer on your local area network. The technology was created by Apple and allows your users to locate and connect to resources on your network, like a network printer. Bonjour is built into the OS X operating system and is compatible with Windows. Bonjour is included and automatically installed with certain software like the Apple Safari browser. It works as a background service in Windows 7 and continuously scans the network for compatible devices. Bonjour Print Services for Windows lets you discover and configure Bonjour-enabled printers from your Windows computer using the Bonjour Printer Wizard. Bonjour Print Services works with either network printers over Wi-Fi or Ethernet, or USB printers shared using a Mac or an airport base station. AirPrint is a mobile printing solution included with the Apple iOS. Apple AirPrint enables wireless printing capability on Apple iOS devices, including the iPhone and iPad.
However, AirPrint support requires using a specifically manufactured printer of the same brand. For example, iPad, iPhone, and iPad Touch users can print wirelessly to any ePrint-enabled HP printer connected to the same local wireless network. Most HP printers released in 2010 and later support AirPrint. Also, many Apple apps support AirPrint, including Safari, Mail, Photos, and iWorks. Cloud printing allows you to wirelessly send jobs from internet-connected devices to a remote printer. The printer must be connected to the internet and have special software installed to allow cloud printing. Google Cloud Print is one type of cloud printing system. Using Google Cloud Print requires either a specially manufactured Google Cloud Print Ready printer or a computer network to the network printer running the Google Cloud Print Connector software. With network printing, when a client up here, like client A, needs to send a print job down here to network printer D, client A formats the print job from the application. Just like with a traditional printing setup, the application creates the job, formats it, and sends it to the print driver. Just as with a traditional job, it's saved on the local workstation in the spool, and then the job is sent from the spool to the printer. Now in a traditional setup, the print job is sent through the USB cable to the printer. But in the network printing setup, the job is redirected. Instead of going out through one of the communication ports, it goes out through the network board, then it goes through the network, and then it arrives at the destination network printer. The network printer then handles the job and prints it out. An important component of any network printer is the print server. Here's why a print server is important. Let's suppose we have a network printer right here and we have clients A, B, and C. Let's suppose, just by random chance, that users on A, B, and C all click the print button on their application at the exact same time, and all the print jobs arrive at the network printer at exactly the same time. Which job does the printer take first? Let's say A sends a job and it's a 500-page document and it's going to require printing for the next 20 minutes or more. B and C have print jobs as well, so do they have to wait until client A's job is done? This is why we implement a print server. The print server saves the jobs in a queue while they're waiting to be serviced by the printer. While the jobs are in the queue, they can be reprioritized because you know that this 500-page document is not that important and it's going to take a long time. But we've got a meeting in 5 minutes with this really important presentation that needs to be printed out. So we're going to change the priority of that 500-page book and move it down while moving the priority of the presentation up so it'll get done first. As the printer becomes available, the job of the print server is to send it to the next print job saved in the queue. There's many different types of print servers. This one here is actually one type of print server. This printer has no print server hardware built in. It's just an off-the-shelf, inexpensive printer. In this case, the operating system running on workstation C functions as a print server. It receives the jobs from the other clients, saves them locally in a directory on the hard drive, and then spools them off to the printer one at a time. Some printers, for instance, this network printer, has a built-in print server that's integrated into the hardware of the printer itself that provides the same function. It receives the print jobs from the various clients, queues them up, gives them a priority, and sends them to the printer as it becomes available. Print servers are also implemented in another way. Suppose we were to put a server on this network. It doesn't have a user running it. Its sole job is to provide storage of files and to provide printing services. With this print server, we can set it up to service this network printer. In this case, the print jobs, instead of going directly to the printer, actually go to the print server software running on the server itself, which provides the print server functions of saving the files, prioritizing, arranging, and spooling them off to the network printer. The last type of print server that we'll talk about is the typical inexpensive printer that has no network interface. All it has is a USB port. We can purchase an external print server that has one interface that connects to the printer with a USB interface. It also has a network jack that plugs into our router. It provides all the print server functions of the server here or the operating system on this workstation, but it's all built into the hardware of the print server itself. So when A or B or C needs to send a job to this printer, the jobs are sent through the network to this hardware print server, which then formats, prioritizes, gets the job ready, saves them in the queue, and then spools them off to the printer one at a time. With network printing, you should also be aware of data privacy issues when using public devices. When you send a print job to a network printer, your job is cached to the hard drive and saved there. If you are printing personal information, then you have just saved your personal information to a public network, opening your information up to thieves. Be careful about which network you are logging into to print from. If you are printing from a mobile device, make sure that user authentication is set up on your device. Mobile devices store passwords for email, VPN and other accounts, as well as banking information, photos, and other personal information that can be stolen if not protected. In this lesson, we talked about how to use network printing to create a more efficient networking environment. This is a high-level overview of networking printing, and we haven't described the actual steps because it depends on what kind of software and hardware you're using. Different operating systems implement servers in different ways, and different external or internal print servers function in different ways. Make sure you check your documentation to see how to set up a printer server with your specific hardware or software.
All right. Well, just to let you know, most of the print servers really are independent of operating systems. They work primarily the same. Basically, they're going to interpret those print signals correctly and send it on to whatever print device you have allocated. It's usually not very complicated, but we're not going to go into that with a lot of detail, but I just wanted to let you know that. All right. So let's move on to our next lab. 844. That's not what I wanted to share. I wanted to share test data. Okay. Here we go. Add a printer. Actually, we're going to do 844 and 845. They're very similar altogether. All right, so 844 is very easy. You're essentially the IT admin. You're going to add, or recently an HP PhotoTools Smart Plus printer was shared throughout the office. Yes, we just did that. The receptionist would like to connect her laptop to the shared printer. In this lab, you're asked to add the shared HP PhotoSmart. So that printer that we just turned into a network printer, we want to add it to the receptionist's laptop. So yes, we just did that. So I don't think you're going to have a problem with this. But let's just go ahead and go through it. Basically, navigate to our devices and printers. We see that he or she has one already. So once again, we want to add a printer, and it's the only network printer that's available. Highlight, next, set the default name, next, add it, print the test page, and finish. So now the receptionist has the option of printing to that HP PhotoSmart and his or her local printer. So that was pretty easy lab. No big deal. All right, so let's move right to 845. It's managed printing. So in this lab, you're an IT admin. You're still the IT admin. They haven't fired you yet, thank goodness. And so you're configuring a new printer for the workstation in the executive office. However, when you send a print job to the printer, it prints out random characters instead of the document. So if you remember in the video, if you print a test page and it's random characters, it's 90. I can tell you the reason being is the driver is either incorrect or outdated, and it's usually 99% a driver issue. So in this lab, you want to change the printer to use the actual correct driver for that. And x86 is just a type of platform. You'll see that periodically. And the thing with this, just to offer a brief explanation, there's really not a difference between the x86 and the i86. Those platforms, everything is so standard now, it's really not fair. So you want to set that printer to be the default printer. All right, so let me ask you this. I mean, where do you find printer drivers? Where do you find any driver for any device?
Online.
Probably in the properties, right? So you'll get used to navigating to your devices and printers. And And here's our Canon. And this is the one that's printing random characters, the executive. So we want to right click, go into the printer properties. And which tab do you think? Well, it's under the advanced tab. Under the advanced tab, you do have a new driver, because right now it doesn't even have a driver loaded. So that's why it didn't really know what to do with that, the printer queues. So we want to add a driver. So you click on the new driver and it opens up the new driver wizard, or add printer driver wizard. And the Windows operating systems are actually pretty reliable. They have most of the generic printers or the common printers listed. You don't have to really look for them. As a matter of fact, Windows 10 Enterprise has probably 1,000 printers listed in there. So we do have a Canon here. As you just make sure you're dealing with it was a Canon inkjet PIXMA IP500 or 1500. So if you look under Canon, we do have that driver available. Canon inkjet PIXMA IP1500. Highlight that. And since it's in here, it is probably a part of the x86 platform or the Windows platform. So you don't really need to look for it. If you needed to look for it, you can click on Have Disk or even do Windows Update. But in this case, once you highlight it, click Next. Basically, it will tell you in the summary page, you're about to add the following drivers, and then just click Finish. And as you see, now we have a driver loaded. It may take a second, maybe instantaneous. Make sure you apply and OK. So now, one thing you want to do, even before, what I would do, and probably won't be able to do it here, I would go back into properties and print a test page, although we can't here. But we also want to set it as default printer, and we all know how to do that. Oops. Just click on that selection, the green arrow changes, and now we go and we look at the printer. The receptionist is happy because the printer is now not printing gibberish. So there you go. Any questions? You guys are really good. All right, so that concludes our labs for the evening. Let's take a 25-minute break, and we're gonna dig right into Packet Tracer. I'm gonna have you add quite a bit on Packet Tracer, wireless additional, we're gonna add servers. We're gonna do a lot for the second half of our adventure tonight. So let's take a 25-minute break and make sure your Packet Tracer is running. Oh, those of you that have not sent me an indication that you have Packet Tracer running, please do. I didn't receive that from everyone. So I gave you a little bit of an assignment. You can add the additional things that we're going to work on today, but I need to have you send me a PKT file so I know that you have Packet Tracer installed successfully. That's a requirement now. And those of you that I haven't received a PKT from, I'll be sending you a reminder after class.
Was that the homework last Wednesday?
Yeah, the homework that I gave you. And I said it was not a big hurry, but primarily why I'm doing this is because I want to make sure you do have Packet Tracer installed. And you can only, well, unless you manipulate the system, but generally I will open up that file and, and know that you've actually completed the homework. So yes, please attach it to, attach it to an email and send it to me. That's all I'm asking for that little part of the assignment last week. All right, so let's take a little bit of a break. We'll come back, it's 8, on my clock it says 8:54. We'll come back or not 8:54, 6:54. We'll come back at 7. So let's make it 30. We'll come back at 7:25. All right. Actually, it's 31. 31 minutes. 7:25.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Ralph.
Okay, Ralph. Thank you. So I'm now recording. All right. So I'm going to go pretty swift through adding these additional components. I will explain what I'm doing. Hopefully you're taking notes or paying attention. The first thing I did, I pulled, and I'll start over a little bit since I'm now recording. So I pulled another PC from our little end devices, put it in our working area. And basically, for me, I know sometimes some of the instructors will want you to create a label palette. I like you just to, it's a good thing because when you create this label, you'll see this in the configuration. And I always like you to add the IP address because you can see it on the working area and you can also see it in configuration. And I'll show you that. So I'm just going to label this second PC, if I can spell correctly. And I'm going to give it the IP address that we have as far as our ranges, but I'm going to label this one 103 because we have 101, 102. 102 is a printer, 103 is our new device, and 101 was our first PC. And remember our first router slash gateway. And this will be the case on all of our packet tracer working areas. As a matter of fact, make sure you save this. We're always going to build from this platform in my classes. Pretty soon it's going to be quite complex. And just to do a quick review about the working platform or the working area, if you hover over a device, you can see the configuration. And don't panic. I'm going to show you how to add some things to the router. So you see that I have different things in there. The printer, the switch. For right now, our switch is very basic. I'm not going to talk about VLANs until we get into networking. But our switch will just be ports that are up and down, and then our end devices. So we just added this PC, we just labeled it. Now let's configure it before we connect it to the switch. So if you click on it, one single click, it brings up your working platform. So generally, this is the physical, including your on-off switch. Just make a note of that on all of your devices. And it has additional modules, and we'll talk about that when we get more in depth into networking. And the A+. But if you go under the config tab.
We can't see what you're doing right now.
Oh, that's right. Stupid. The way it's shared. All right. So hold on. Hold on. Don't panic. Let me just share my desktop. All right. Is that better?
Yes.
So let me start over. So I clicked. This is our new device. So I clicked on the device. It brings up our little configuration pop-up. And I clicked on the config tab or section, and that will bring up your configuration area. Generally, that will bring up the settings area. So if you click on that settings item in the menu, it's the same configuration area. And this is where you should always add your gateway, which in our case is always going to be our router. Remember that. And in most cases, you can depend on that association. So if you remember, our router is 192.168 0.1. So go ahead and type that into your gateway area. And then you want to click on your fast Ethernet. That's essentially what's associated with our Ethernet connection. It's associated with our network card. So when you click on there, then we can actually add our IP address that we assign, our PC, Windows. Hold on. All right. So make sure it's on static. And we're going to talk all about DHCP and all that fun stuff in the future. And the IP address that we're assigned, 192.168.0.103. And if you click out of it, it will automatically populate the subnet mask that we want. Make sure the port is on this checkbox here. And for now, that's all you need to configure on your device. And to double check, make sure you hover over it, and essentially it will give you the basic information that you just configured, our IP address and our default gateway. All right, now we want to connect that to the switch so that, and my test, this rudimentary test that I will always have you check is, can you communicate with the printer? So can you print something to the printer? That's what you're simulating with that ping. So let's go ahead and go into our connectors or connections. And I'm just going to, I always, essentially for now, just select the straight through cable and make sure you've selected. You get this little indicator here with the RJ45 looking in and connect to the Ethernet port that you just configured, and then just connect it to that first open port on the switch. And basically you get the amber light because that's actually realistic. Whenever you plug in a cable to the switch, it goes through its configuration and it's making sure the connections are successful. It's actually sending information back and forth to ensure that you can communicate successfully with the switch. So, and it generally takes about 10 seconds, even in real life. So that's realistic. So make sure that your lights are all green. Green means go. And remember, go ahead and click back on your PC, go to the desktop, go to the command prompt, and run your ping. And remember, we're always going to ping the printer for now. So the command is ping, and then your IP address. And if you get a successful response from the printer, that means your device has been configured correctly. And I do, when you send these PKT files, it's okay just to send the PKT files. Eventually, I will have you send this command prompt, which is not a part of the PKT files. Just take a screenshot of the command prompt and send that as well. All right, that's just the desktop. All right, so our basic network has now grown one PC, and that's where you should be, or well, at least you should have been on Monday. But he probably had to do some things, some different things. That's okay. I'm going to have you do some more, which may or may not be the same. All right. So the first thing we want to do, we are going to simulate a connection to the internet, and this is not going to be very complex right now. We're going to make it a little bit. I will provide more details about what you're actually doing once we get into the networking portion. But what I want you to do is go down to your network devices, and at the very bottom there is a cloud connection. It's essentially WAN simulation. Bring that little cloud up, and it's a Cloud PT, Cloud 1. And we're just going to, for my purposes, just label it Internet. Internet. All right. And we're not going to do anything with this right now. We're just going to make sure that we have, eventually we're going to do a lot with it, but for right now, we just want to make sure that that's available so that we see we're actually connecting from our little basic network out to the internet. And so what we're going to do as far as a connection within our internet, we're gonna use what we call a crossover cable, and that's the dash line. And you probably have questions. Please save those to when we go into detail about connections. So basically, we just want to select that connector, and it's still another Ethernet connector, and we want to connect it to the other gigabit port on our router, and then we want to connect it to the Ethernet on our cloud. And that should go directly to green. If it does not, go ahead and click on your router. Make sure you go to that other gigabit port and make sure it's on. The checkbox is on. All right, so while we're on the router, this is something a little bit different that I did not go over last week. I was going to go over on Monday. We're actually going to add more ports to the router. And I want you to do this every time you configure a router, a 1941 or 1841. And the way that runs, please follow me closely. So go ahead and open up the router, go to the physical view. Now the first thing you have to do is turn it off. If you look, there's a little switch right here. It's an on-off switch. Go ahead and turn that off. And of course, when you turn it off, all your lights go red because you've lost all your connections. And I'm going to take my and you don't have these two. It should look like this. These slots are empty. So what I want you to do, you're going to add two modules to your router. You're going to add 4 additional Ethernet ports and 2 serial ports. So the first one is this HWIC TAC 4ES, and this is just 4 Ethernet ports. So just drag that, left click and drag that over the little slot there and drop it in there. And you see it represents 4 additional Ethernet RJ45 ports. And yes, we will use these eventually. We're not going to work with them tonight, but prepare to use those definitely when we go more into networking. And then the serial ports are this HWIC TAC2T, 2 Tangle. Go ahead and drag that module and plop it into the other slot. Are we all still with me? Still good?
Yes.
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 So once you have those modules in, go ahead and turn your router back on. Now you notice the ports don't automatically come on, and that's actually realistic. So you actually have to go back into config after it boots, wait for it to boot. It won't allow you to do anything until it boots. So don't panic. The lights will remain red. You actually have to enable those ports again. So go select your first gigabit port and bring it up. As you see, the indicators will follow you. And then the second port, bring that up. And if you hover over the router now, you should have additional ports. You should have 2 serial ports and 4 Ethernet ports.
Wait, I'm sorry, I missed that second step there when you went to the gigabyte.
Okay, so make sure you go to your gigabit Ethernet ports, click on them, and make sure they are up or on.
On, okay, got it.
So make sure the checkbox is there, and it will bring the ports back up. And then you get all green. Are we all good there?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, so now we've simulated our connection to the internet. Our router is doing its thing, it's routing packets. All right, so now we're going to configure a wireless connection in our little office here and make sure that those wireless devices can, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna, instead of 2 devices, I want you to configure 3, or we will all configure 3. So let's go back to our network devices first. So click on that one on the top line. On the second line, if you hover over them, in the middle or the fourth little icon is wireless devices. Want to go ahead and click on that. And then in the wireless devices, there's an AP access point PT. This is, for now, this is the one we want to use. There's other access points. Do not use those. They will not work the way that you think they should work. So let's go ahead and plump our access point into our working area. And yes, I have a naming convention for that too. We're going to call it our first access point, because we probably will have several access points. This one's going to be our first. And we don't, for the purposes of what we're doing now, we're not going to assign it an IP address. And I'll explain why and all that eventually, but for now, this access point just acts as a conduit for your access, for your wireless devices. It just has two ports, port 0, port 1, and we'll get into detailed explanations about those. James says it won't connect to the cloud. James, make sure you connect it to the Ethernet port and the cloud. That's the only way you can connect it. You have to use a crossover, whoops, and you have to connect it to the Ethernet 6 port. All right. All right, so back to our access point, first access point. A couple of things that we need to do to our access point. We need to configure it. So let's click on it, go to our config tab, and make sure it's on. And we want to go to port 1. And there's a reason for this, and believe me, you'll get a lot of details about this soon. I'll expand this a little bit, make sure the port is on. We want to change the SSID. This is your ID of your connection to your wireless. It comes out as default, and actually from the manufacturer, it comes out as default. Many of you probably have wireless SSIDs. Comcast has a certain naming convention, CenturyLink, and basically they will ask you to change the SSID, so it's not the default. So we're going to do the same thing. Change it to your first AP, just first AP. All right, we're going to leave it at 2.4 gigs, 6 channel. We're not going to change any of that yet. The coverage range, etc. We don't really need to do anything with those. Our authentication, we do want to change that. Right now it's disabled, which is not good. That means that anyone can connect this if they know the SSID. We want to change it to WPA2 PSK, which is passkey or passphrase. So make sure you select that radio button. And then your passphrase is going to be your last name and then 1, 2, 3, 4 for us. So just type in your last name and 1, 2, 3, 4. All together, no spaces. All right. So it's first AP, all one word, and then your last name, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you go into settings, you'll see that your display name is set there. So go ahead and close that. The one good thing about access points, you don't really see anything. And if everything is configured correctly, then you really don't need to do anything. But we do need to connect this to the switch. It passes packets. It's really the only way that we're going to connect it to our network. So let's just take another straight through cable and connect port 0. It's the only port you can connect to on this type of access point, which is true. They really only serve a very, very basic purpose. So we're going to connect it from port 0 to one of our next available fast Ethernet port. And once again, the switch will go through the configuration it needs to support the packet information coming from the access point. And we're going to talk a lot about what's the purpose of an access point, how and the types of access point, including wireless routers, etc., which access points support 5G, and so on and so forth. All right, so hopefully you got all that configured right, and you remember what your SSID is, first AP. So now we're going to add some wireless devices. So go to your in devices. And the first thing I want you to do is plunk a laptop, just a regular laptop. Oops, we're not going to get there yet. And we're not going to connect it directly to the switch. We're going to do some things to it first. And then take a look down in here. There's a wireless tablet. Go ahead and put those in your working spot. And we're going to change the names of those in a second. Give yourself some room here. Then finally, you have a smartphone. And I think I'm going to put the smartphone over. I think I'm going to put everything over here. Can you all see that?
Wait, which one's the smartphone? Is it just smart device?
Yes. It'll, once you add it to the working area, it'll show smartphone. It says smart device, but
Got it. Thank you.
smartphone. And throw them over here. Okay, so for our smartphone, yes, I'm going to follow my naming convention, and I'm going to call it first. Yeah, we don't want to type all that in. Yeah, all right. Let's just stay consistent. First smartphone, and we are going to give this an IP address as well, following our IP addressing convention 192.168.0.104. All right. And then our laptop, and this is just labeling.
But hey, Dwight, with us, since we already did our first laptop, so this one's going to be our second laptop.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then with the IP address, it's going to be 105 for us because we already have
Okay. Yep.
104.
Yep. Just as
Okay.
long as you don't repeat IP addresses.
Okay.
All right. So for our laptop, I'm going to say first that we're going to change this to a wireless laptop. So first wireless laptop, and give it its appropriate IP address, whatever to follow your IP addressing. I'm going to just keep mine very simple. And then finally, our tablet, first tablet. And they all get IP addresses. So you have a smartphone, a laptop that we're going to turn into a wireless laptop, and then a tablet. And you say, okay, well, how do we turn this laptop into a wireless laptop? All right, so go ahead and click on it. It'll open up your configuration. Keep it on the physical tab. There's a little power switch right here by the power cable. Go ahead and turn it off. All right, we're gonna remove, so you have to left click on your Ethernet, your RJ45, remove that from the laptop and stick it into your holding area here as far as modules. And we're going to add a wireless module, and it's the very top one. It's that WPC300N. Go ahead and click on that and slide that into, and all it is just a wireless network adapter. Slide it into the module. Make sure you turn it back on. All right. So now you have a wireless laptop. All right, so we can go right into the configuration on our laptop. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add a gateway. You notice that it defaults to DHCP, which is generally the case. We're just going to change that to static and add our gateway. Right? And then we go down to our, ignore the rest of these, go down to our wireless, which is associated with our wireless adapter. Go ahead and click on that. Now, you remember we configured our access point, right? We configured it with an SSID, right? Remember what that SSID was? First, space AP, right? And we selected, as far as our authentication, the WPA2, and we'll talk about that a lot. And then your passphrase, which is your last name and 1, 2, 3, 4. We're not done yet. So after you finish that, go down to your IP configuration and enter in that IP address that we have that you have for your laptop. 192.168.0.105. And you notice that now we have a wireless connection. That's what the wavy little vertical wavy lines from our laptop to our access point. That means that you've configured everything successful. You got the right authentication. You're connecting to the access point. And you should now be able to communicate. Any questions before we go to the mobile devices?
It's Carol. I guess the tablet, I wasn't able to work on that one. So,
We haven't gotten there yet. So,
oh, no, just naming it though. I just wanted to.
oh, so the tablet, we just named it first tablet.
First tablet. Okay, thank you.
All right, so the smartphone, let's do that one first. Click on it. Looks
Old
like
phone. Okay.
old BlackBerry with the old buttons. Go into the config tab. You should be able to do this. It should be the same process that you just configured the laptop. So I'm just going to buzz right through these. Gateway. Whoops. Stop that. 168.0.1. Now you notice on these mobile devices, they do have the cellular 3G, 4G. You can ignore those for right now. Now, if you get this warning, it's just basically saying that it doesn't recognize any type of, and usually mobile devices will do this because it doesn't recognize that that's a true connection. You're forcing that gateway, but that's fine. Go ahead and click OK on that. And it still should be okay to continue the configuration. So we want to go into the wireless. Once again, we want to change the default to our default SSID, first AP. We want to select WPA, WPA2 PSK, and your passphrase. Passphrases have to be at least eight characters and only letters and numbers, no special characters. At least for this access point. So WPA2 PSK, all right? And then finally, our IP address for our smartphone. Yes, we do assign it an IP address. So you can connect wirelessly and cellular, from the cellular. And that was 0.104 for me. It's subnet. And you notice that it's already connected, but when you configure the IP address, it's adding that network connection, and it should reconnect to the access point. And this is truly how it works in your business at our institution. This is how you're connecting to those access points, those configurations, those levels of authentication. So that's good. We know that we have connection for the smartphone and the wireless laptop, and the tablet should be very similar. Same process. Go ahead and set your gateway. And you should get the same warning. That's fine. Click out of it. Select your wireless. Go ahead and change all of your wireless configurations. That's our SSID, WPA2. Yes, yes. IP address 0.106. All right, are you all with me?
No.
Did I lose you?
I'm lost. It's Carol.
Okay.
I'm good.
So talk to me. Where are you lost?
So I was at the smartphone still. So
Why?
so on the smartphone.
I have some mistake also. I put a wrong router.
Yes.
So how to remove that?
Oh, so click on the X. The delete is a delete icon up here. This little X. Just click that.
Okay.
Say go here, and you get this little X, and you can delete any of the devices. You just hover over it and click left click, and it'll delete. And to get out of that, just hit your escape key.
Okay.
And also, I'm doing echo. I can't understand. Well, if you're having echo, James, see, that's usually because more people are unmuted. Let's see. I need to make sure, well, everyone's muted, so, well, for the most part. Okay, that should be a little better. Make sure you mute yourself if you're not speaking so we don't get the echo. Carol, where are you? You have to unmute yourself if you're speaking.
Sorry. On the smartphone,
Uh-huh.
I was trying to show the settings. I just need to look at what your settings were.
Okay. So
Static. Okay. So under the global.
well, under interface, you want to go to wireless. Under global, it's just the settings where you set your gateway, and then you want to go under interface to wireless to configure your wireless connection, and then your actual IP address for the device.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, James. No one else is reporting. Is anyone else having a problem with echo?
No.
No.
Yeah, I think that's your system, James. I think everyone else is doing okay. You may want to turn your volume down a little bit, or if you have a headset, use that. All right, so hopefully you've all gotten this far, but we do need to check to make sure we can actually print from all of these devices. So once again, bring up your desktop and your command prompt and ping the printer. And you should get successful responses because you're connecting via wireless to the switch all the way to the printer. And you want to do that on all of them. That will represent a successful configuration. Okay. Yes, even there's a desktop and command prompt on your smartphone. All right. So did everyone get a successful connection from each of your wireless devices to your printer? Thumbs up, thumbs down. How's it going?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, so what I want you to do now on your own, I want you to add another access point on this side of the network and just add a wireless laptop. So you're going to add what it's going to look like. You're going to add another access point. This is just for practice. over here. And then you're going to add just a laptop and make sure you can communicate from that laptop to the printer. I'll let you work on that for 5 minutes. And I think, let's see, what else do we need? Yeah, we're going to add a couple servers to our little network. We're not going to configure the services. We're just going to add them. Oh, might as well do that now. So after you finish adding your additional access point, I do want you to add a couple servers. And I want you to add the plain servers. It's just server PT 1, 2, and their labels and IP address. You're going to have one is going to be your DHCP. We're not going to call it first, just DHCP and 192.168 dot. I think I want to put it on 1.4 for your DHCP. And then the second one.
How many servers? I'm sorry, how many servers are we adding?
2 servers.
2? Okay.
And the
Okay.
second one is going to be DNS 192.168. .1.5. And this is going to be second access point. Second wireless laptop. 192.168.0.107. And remember, you have to make that, turn that into a wireless laptop. So don't forget to add the correct module. And you see that because that access point is not configured, everything is default. I wanted to show you that it automatically connects to that wireless point, that access point. But we don't want that. So make sure you configure your access point accordingly. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to change the SSID to second AP. Even after doing that, it'll disconnect. But you also know you have to go into port 1, and everything is WPA2. And for this one, we're going to do the opposite, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then your last name.
So it's the same password, correct?
No, we want a different path.
Oh.
We're doing the number, the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and then your last name.
Oh, okay.
And we want to go ahead and connect it to the switch. And we want to configure our laptop first. Static.
Hey Dwight, real quick, this is Danielle.
Go
Do
ahead.
we, when we connect the second access point to the switch, we put it on the gigabit or the fast Ethernet?
Fast Ethernet's fine.
Okay.
So with the other laptop, the setting for the gateway is always going to be the same, correct?
Yes, we only have one gateway in here, and that's our router, so it's always going to be that. That will ensure that we're communicating correctly within this little corporate network. And so if you get everything connected as far as the wireless, make sure you can communicate to the printer. Good there. And now for our servers. Basically, servers they're designed for a specific purpose. We're not going to do a lot with them yet. You can actually even make a server wireless. You notice we have a wireless adapter here, but we're not going to change the server. We're going to keep the servers wired. But if you go into the config tab, you can see that we have our label here. For our servers, we're not going to add a gateway. The servers are a little bit different as far as the communication, which is why they're on a different subnet. Well, not completely different, but they have primary purposes. And I'll explain that more as we get into understanding the networking infrastructure and topology. But we do need to configure our fast Ethernet port with that IP address that we assigned. And this was 1.4, 192.168.1.4. Make sure our port's on. And we want to connect each of the servers. For now, we're going to connect them to the switch. All right. And the same with our DNS. And eventually we will be configuring the servers to actually do some specific things. No gateway, just configure the IPv4 or the IP address. Oops. And
Right.
yes.
This is Halilat. When we're configuring the server, are we leaving them on static or are we changing it to DHCP?
We're leaving everything static right now.
Okay, just because I labeled it DHCP.
Yeah, everything's static right now. We're going to do a lot of different things with our servers. But for now, I just want you to make sure everything is connected.
So with the servers, you just use a solid?
Yeah, straight through straight through
Straight through.
solid line, straight through cable. So here's a kind of a test question. Can you ping either of these servers from your PCs or your end devices? If so, and why or why not? Try pinging the servers. In other words, like from your first PC, you can ping your second PC. Which is one.
It's set on reachable.
But if you try to ping the server, one of the servers, 1.4. So why can't you ping the servers? They're connected to the switch.
Is it because our other devices have the 0.0 where the servers have the 0.1?
That's a part of it, yes. So you're getting the gist about addressing. Okay, let's say we add our gateway to this server. Is that going to help?
Yes.
So if we go back to our PC and try to ping
No.
it, is that going to provide?
No.
Because it's on a different network. Remember in the video it talked about network address, system address, and network address? How you determine which one is which based on how it's matched to a particular octet. I would definitely review that, and we're going to go into that into details how that works. And it's for this purpose, it's not dependent upon the address. But if you change this, I just wanted to show you this. Let's change our fast Ethernet to the third octet being 0 for our DHCP. And now if you try to ping it, so just remember that the way that that works, because the networking addresses they're on the same network with that third octet being 0. And there's a reason why you configure them, and we'll talk about this, not on the same network. It's about security. So let's make sure we keep these at 1.4 and 1.5 for now. So I'm going to go back in to this one and change it so it matches. And soon you'll be able to communicate from your PC, or at least be able to access the server services once they're enabled. But for now, for security purposes, let's make sure our servers are on a different network, but in the same infrastructure per se, if you want to get the verbiage correctly. So we're going to keep them 1.4 and 1.5, and we will eventually get to the point where you will be able to communicate with the servers based on certain criteria as far as networking, and that's getting into more kind of intermediate networking. But you should have this configuration all set. Connection to the internet, a router with its additional ports. As a matter of fact, just to give you a heads up, eventually we're going to connect one of these servers to the router. And it'll do something a little bit different than what it's doing now. But for right now, I want everything connected. I would like to have everything connected to the switch. Your wireless, you're going to have 2 access points for now with wireless connections. On one side, your smartphone and your tablet and your wireless laptop, and the other side, just your wireless laptop. Did everyone get this connected? Get this connected, not disconnected.
Yes.
Does everyone have this configuration
Yes.
or some resemblance of it? And it's communicating successful, and all of your lights are green.
Ah,
Ah. And that didn't sound like an affirmative.
yes.
It sounded more like
Horrible.
negative.
So frustrating.
Questions?
Mm.
So for the smartphone and the tablet, did you have to go in and set them up as wireless?
What do you mean set them up as wireless?
Oh, I don't know. So for some reason, mine's not connecting.
Now, if it's not connecting, make sure that you're checking your wireless adapter. Make sure your SSID is correct, and make sure your passphrase is correct. And make sure that your IP address has been configured statically. When you hover over these devices, you'll see that they have a cellular IP address, that 169. That's being issued by a cell tower, and it's a default. The 169 means default, which means that it will communicate cellularly or wirelessly, like to the web, etc. So the fact that you have two addresses in there is normal. The 169 is a part of the configuration for your mobile devices. And you see that they both will have an address like that. And you see that that's the 3G, 4G, which is realistic. That's exactly, if you look on your configuration for your smartphone, you'll see it will have an IP address. Well, unless it's IPv6, and that's something a little bit different. And we'll talk about that as well.
So but how did it automatically connect to your access point?
Pardon?
How did it automatically connect to your access point?
Make sure the SSID is case sensitive. So
Yeah.
I had that issue, and it has to be exactly how you put it on there. All the other SSIDs had to match up.
What Ralph is saying, your SSID on your access point on port 1, this first AP, yes, it is case sensitive. It has to match exactly, as well as the passphrase. They have to match exactly on your end devices. So make sure you check that on your wireless, say first AP, and they have to match exactly. That's the first basic lesson in security for wireless devices.
That's what it is.
There you go. Other questions? So if you finish this basic configuration, please save it. I'm not asking for screenshots. I want you to send me the actual PKT file. Save it and send me the PKT file, please. And just a refresher, you can either close it, it'll prompt you to save, or it's a typical app, file, save.
Dwight, it's James.
Yes, James.
Yeah, how come the desktop, my desktop on the bottom, the 192.168.0.0.101, it's red. It won't turn green.
All right. You want to share your screen, James?
Yeah.
Go ahead and share your screen. We'll help you out.
Share. There you go.
Okay. Hover over your PC.
Okay.
Or click into the configuration. Hover over it. Let's see what the configuration
Which one? The
Yeah, the one that's not communicating. That one.
config. Which one do I need to?
What happened to your Ethernet? What happened to your network card? Did you pull it out? You have no interface.
Go to physical.
Yeah, go to physical.
Which one do I need to remove and put? Oh, this one?
No. What?
Turn it off. And then,
Did you change something on your?
no, it just doesn't want to. Do I need to put this one?
No, that's wireless.
Yeah.
Just scrap it and restart it.
Yeah, put another one.
Do a new one.
Yeah. Thanks.
How do I restart this?
So close that. Click on the X, the delete icon, top left, the little X with the arrow.
This one?
Way up at the very top. The X. X.
Yeah.
Top left. Above the logical. Yeah, click there. Click no. And then hover over your PC. Left click. Click. All right. Now hit the escape key.
What?
Hit the escape key.
Oh.
Now select another PC. Place it in your working area. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead and grab a connection straight through. Yep. Fast Ethernet to the switch.
Fast Ethernet, either?
Whichever. Yep.
Oh.
And now you need to configure that PC with the IP address, your 101, 192.168.0.101.
192. .0.101. Oh, that's it, right?
Nope. That's just a label. You actually have
you need to go.
You have to configure the IP address. So go in the config tab.
Which one? Static?
Yep, that's the gate. You want to configure the gateway 192.168.0.1.
That one?
Yes, one. And then you want to click on, nope, don't close that. Click on Fast Ethernet under interface. And you want to configure your IP address to your 192.168.0.101.
192.168.0.101.
And then click out of there. And now you can close it. All right, so now you should be able to communicate to the printer.
Much better.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, thank you all for sending your PKTs. I received most everyone's.
Except me. This
Oh,
one.
you wanted this one right now?
Yes. Just save it and send it. And
All right, I'll send it.
that'll count for your homework.
Try how to send it. Just save and send it
It'll-
to your email.
Yes, it'll save it as a PKT file. So just attach that to an email and send it to me.
Okay.
Oh, file.
I missed out the Cloud PT.
Pardon?
The Cloud PT one. I deleted it. I got the wrong.
Okay, we're not gonna detail that a lot now. So if you miss that, that's fine. It's just it's more symbolic now.
I'll send it on my email.
So you can stop sharing.
Oh. Yeah.
All right. So that's all I have for tonight. I don't really have, if you send me your file, that's all the homework you have. So you have kind of a break this week. Things will pick up a little bit more next week as we get more into networking. So prepare yourself, take a breather. But if you have any questions or anything, please let me know. Things will start to get interesting because we need to do more test prep as we're getting closer to the practice tests for your certifications. But please let me know if you have any questions or issues. And I promise I'll try not to miss any more classes unless I die or something. But any questions?
As of now, no. Eventually,